Okay, picture this. You're driving, and suddenly you see them. The cones, the flashing blue lights, that, impromptu barricade right across the road.
Yeah, that instant feeling, right? Your whole day just got interrupted.
Exactly. And that feeling, that whole situation is what we're diving into today. We want to explore the difference between, say, an illegal targeted stop and those more regulated DUI roadblocks you might run into.
And I think the best place to start, really, is with something that caused a lot of controversy and is now, thankfully, being stamped out. I'm talking about the motorcycle-only checkpoints.
Yeah.
They're now outlawed, federally speaking.
Right. Let's unpack that, because our sources show this was a real problem. States like New York, Georgia, Virginia, law enforcement was setting up checkpoints where only motorcycles got pulled over. Often when riders were heading to big events, like Americade, Rolling Thunder, Bike Week down in Daytona.
Exactly. And the justification was always motorcycle safety.
But the reality seemed different. Mass ticketing for things like aftermarket exhaust, maybe non-standard turn signals.
Or even just fishing. Looking for outstanding warrants, anything they could find. It really did feel like targeted harassment.
It absolutely looked that way.
But what's really interesting here, and kind of inspiring, is how effective the advocacy was. Groups like the AMA, the American Motorcyclists Association, and the MRF, the Motorcycle Riders Foundation, they lobbied hard.
They really took the fight to Congress.
They did, and they won. It wasn't just, a policy change. It got written into law. The federal highway bill was specifically updated and now blocks federal funds from being used for these kinds of discriminatory motorcycle-only stops.
That's huge. It sets a really strong precedent. And we're seeing states follow suit too, right? Like California, Louisiana, Missouri, New Jersey. They've passed their own specific laws banning these stops.
Exactly. So the takeaway there is clear. Targeting based on vehicle type, that's out. But that brings us to the other side of the coin. The general sobriety checkpoints. DUI roadblocks.
Which are still legal, though definitely controversial in, 38 states plus D.C.?
Correct.
Yeah.
Places like Ohio and its neighbors, for instance, use them. But, and this is crucial, because these stops do restrict constitutional rights, freedom of movement, the courts demand very, very strict rules for them.
Okay, so given how the motorcycle stops were seen as discriminatory, just how strict are the rules for a legal DUI checkpoint? What do the police have to do?
There are 4 main guidelines that keep popping up in court rulings. First, the whole operation has to be planned in advance by supervisors. Officers in the field can't just decide on the fly who to stop or where to set up.
So like a pattern every third car or something like that.
Precisely. A neutral formula.
Yeah.
Second, the location isn't random. It has to be chosen by policymakers based on hard data DUI statistics for that area. And they have to consider safety, both for the public driving through and for the officers working the checkpoint.
Okay, pre-planned pattern, data-driven location. What else?
Third, the duration. It has to be limited. Drivers can only be detained for the absolute minimum time needed for the purpose of the stop, which is checking for impairment.
And the fourth one. This feels like the big one for transparency.
It really is key to the whole legal justification. 2 parts here. Drivers have to be clearly alerted, visible signs, flashing lights, the works, and law enforcement must publish the times and locations of the checkpoints in advance, usually in local newspapers or online.
Wow. Okay, they have to announce it beforehand.
Yes. If they don't do that, the checkpoint is generally considered an illegal search under the Fourth Amendment. It fails the constitutional test.
All right, so let's shift gears slightly. Say you, the listener, find yourself approaching one of these pre-announced, seemingly legal checkpoints. Let's do some rapid fire rights. What do you absolutely need to know? First up, can you just turn around, avoid it?
Legally, yes. Any legal maneuver or U-turn where permitted, taking a side street before you enter the checkpoint zone, is technically allowed. But, and this is a big but, police are absolutely watching for that.
Ah, so that legal turn might suddenly make you seem suspicious to them.
It could. It might give them what they call reasonable suspicion to pull you over separately after you turn off. So it's legal, but perhaps not advisable if you want to avoid interaction.
Okay, so you're stopped. What must you provide and what can you politely decline?
Mandatory, under threat of arrest if you refuse, are your driver's license, vehicle registration, and proof of insurance. Hand those over.
And that's it?
That's it for mandatory disclosure. Everything else, optional. You're not legally required to answer questions like, where are you coming from? Where are you going? Have you had anything to drink tonight? What's in the car?
How do you handle that? Just stay silent.
Be polite, always, but firm. You can simply say, I decline to answer any questions. And then immediately ask the most important question you can ask. Am I being detained or am I free to go?
Why is that question so important?
Because it puts the officer on the spot.
Yeah.
They have to decide, are they just briefly checking documents or are they shifting to detention based on some suspicion?
And speaking of detention, what if you're just sitting there, waiting? Is there a time limit?
Courts have generally found that the initial stop should be brief. We're talking minutes. If the delay stretches on, say, up to around 20 minutes, without any further action like a sobriety test being initiated, the detention starts to look unreasonable. But they won't just tell you, okay, 20 minutes are up, you can go.
You have to keep asking.
You have to keep asking, am I free to go? If they don't have grounds to hold you longer, they eventually have to let you leave.
Okay, last one. Searches. What if they ask to search your car?
Simple answer, never consent. Just say clearly, I do not consent to a search.
And they can't search anyway.
Not without a valid reason.
Yeah.
They need one of three things. Your permission, which you just denied, a warrant, which they almost certainly won't have for a routine checkpoint stop, or
Probable cause.
or sometimes a lower standard of reasonable suspicion, depending on the context, but they need to be able to articulate it. That means they need to state what specific illegal item they believe they'll find based on something they see or smell, like drugs in plain view, or the strong odor of marijuana.
Without that, they can't legally search just because you're at a checkpoint.
Correct. I do not consent to a search. Firm, polite, clear.
So, wrapping this all up,
Wow.
what's the main takeaway here? It feels like two big things. First, the power of advocacy, like with the motorcycle groups, really can stop targeted, unfair practices.
Absolutely. It shows change is possible when rights are being violated.
And second, for the legal DUI checkpoints that remain, your power comes from knowing the rules they have to follow those 4 guidelines and knowing your specific rights during the stop.
Precisely. Knowledge is your protection in that scenario.
Yeah.
And that leaves us with a final thought, something for you to consider. Think about that requirement for police to publish checkpoint times and locations in advance. How does that specific rule really balance the stated goal of public safety in catching impaired drivers against our constitutional rights to privacy and freedom from unreasonable intrusion? Does announcing it defeat the purpose, or is it essential to keep it legal? Something to chew on.